This is a presentation of the public hearing draft for Amendment 11 to the Spiny Lobster Fishery Management Plan. And this amendment deals with conservation measures that were developed to help protect threatened and endangered species. So the purpose of public hearings is the Council is currently trying to find some solutions for a fishery management issue. This issue deals with the spiny lobster fishery this time, and we must satisfy the Magnuson-Stevens Act while providing the best options to meet the objectives of the public. So management options have already been identified by the Council, and the Council has selected preferred alternatives for this amendment. And the Council would like to know what you think about the alternatives, and if you have an opinion, let them know why you feel that way. So far with Amendment 11, a 2009 biological opinion identified some issues that needed to be addressed by the Council. Council developed Spiny Lobster Amendment 10, and during public hearings before final action was taken on Amendment 10, spiny lobster fishing industry as well as some other public expressed a desire to work a little bit more closely to develop some reasonable options to solve that fishery issue. And so the Council decided to move two actions from Amendment 10 into their own standalone amendment, which is the one we're talking about now, and that's Amendment 11. So after that happened, before we got to this point, the Council there was some workshops that went on between the protected resource people and the spiny lobster fishing industry to help identify some reasonable alternatives that would help solve the problems that we're facing. And then an options paper was developed using that input that was given from industry and also the marine sanctuary. And that options paper took into account some of the biological, social, and economic effects of the proposed actions. And now we're at this last phase before final decision is made, and that's public hearing. And that's where we're coming out to ask for public opinion on the work that's already been done and the options that are being considered currently. So the need for this amendment is that the Endangered Species Act requires that fishing activities do as little harm as possible to threatened or endangered species. And I had mentioned sort of what initiated this issue was a biological opinion done in 2009 that concluded that the spiny lobster trap fishery negatively impacts small-toothed sawfish, sea turtles, and staghorn and elkhorn corals. So this amendment has been developed in order to address that biological opinion, which set requirements for actions that must be taken to limit spiny lobster fishing to protect those threatened or endangered species. So there's two actions in this amendment. Action 1 would create closed areas to protect staghorn and elkhorn corals, and Action 2 would require gear markings to limit interactions with protected resources that could become entangled in gear lines. So Action 1, which is the proposed close areas, the Endangered Species Act requires that NOAA Fisheries Service and the Council work together to protect staghorn and elkhorn coral colonies by either expanding existing closed areas or by creating new closed areas. And it was identified that the movement of spiny lobster traps during storms poses the biggest threat to coral colonies. So the Council developed three alternatives for this action. The first one is a no-action alternative, which would not limit spiny lobster fishing in the federal waters off the Keys. The second alternative would close all known hard bottom in the federal waters off the Floral Keys to spiny lobster fishing. And the third alternative, which is currently the Gulf and the South Atlantic's preferred alternative, would create 56 new closed areas in the federal waters off of the Florida Keys. And those areas are created to protect identified coral colonies. So a little background information, the maps and the locations of the hard bottom habitat and threatened coral colonies were developed with the help of a number of different groups listed on this slide. And you'll see the closed areas are set in maps like this, and there's this map that will show you sort of the boundaries up from Monroe County all the way, up to the upper Keys through the lower Keys. There's a number of different areas that are proposed, and there's different maps. When you look at these maps, you'll see the blue dots are the identified coral colonies, and the Currently, these boxes that have the diagonal stripes in them are the proposed closed areas under preferred alternative 3. You can sort of see the beige background, and that identifies all the hard bottom, and that would be that hard bottom would be closed under alternative 2, which is not currently preferred. And then you look sort of to the right of this map, it'll show you there's a pink and green area, and those are areas that are already closed to spiny lobster fishing, either for research or preservation purposes. So if you're looking for those maps, the best place to find them is to go to the Gulf Council website on the link at the bottom of this page. And you can find them either in the public hearing guide or in the draft amendment itself. There's also just a link to all those maps on this page if you can find your way there. So for options 2 and 3, there's also a sub-options included in this in Action 1, and that would be either to close spiny lobster fishing altogether or just to close spiny lobster trapping. And as you can see, preferred option A is to close spiny lobster trapping or to prohibit spiny lobster trapping in closed areas. And then just a little sidebar, the industry had made some requests that are currently not in the amendment. They had requested that the council consider splitting areas 2 and area 30 of the proposed closed areas that are already contained in alternative 3, and that would create 58 instead of 56 proposed closed areas, and it would modify the current estimate of closed fishable area. So if you want to go ahead and look at those maps that I directed you to and check out areas 2 and 3, they're not currently in the amendment, which means the council doesn't have the option to vote on that yet, but if you go ahead and include some comment about how you feel about those proposed areas 2 and 3, about splitting those, or 2 and 30, about splitting those and making more closed areas, but I guess theoretically reducing the closed areas. So the second action in this amendment considers using trap line markings. So gear lines are consistently found as marine debris, and they have been found to harm small-toothed sawfish, sea turtles, and elkhorn and staghorn corals. And the biological opinion requires that trapline markings be used by the spiny lobster fishery by August of 2017. Theoretically, the use of trapline markings would then allow entanglements to be identified to a certain fishery, and then more specific management measures could be made once the fishery was identifiable. So there are 3 alternatives in this action. The Gulf's current preferred alternative is a no-action alternative, so that would not require the use of gear line markings. Alternative 2 would require that all spiny lobster trap lines have white markings along their entire length. There could be a tracer that could be used, or there's consideration of using white line. And then alternative 3 would require that spiny lobster traps have a permanently fixed white markings that are at least 4 inches wide and spaced at least every 15 feet along the entire trap line. Okay, so send us your comments. You can send written comments on Spiny Lobster Amendment 11 using the online comment form, and the link is provided on this page. You can also write the Gulf Council. And if you have any questions, go ahead and email us at golfcouncil@golfcouncil.org.